Shalom, this is Sister Yapashana, House of Abba Yeshaya, back to 50 Shades of Femininity with the topic of feminine counselor, how to give feminine advice, and we'll also be discussing about problems in the patriarchy. So, I just want to start off saying all praises, honor, and esteem to the Most High, Yahweh, and I pray that this message receives everyone in good vibes, good energy, good space, with joy, gladness, peace, and love. Okay, so all wonderful wives are their husbands' counselors, mentors, and best friends. As a woman, that is a special gift that you have in counseling. The gift of insight and intuition is unique to our sex. Also, you have a perspective of your husband's life that no one else has, and you're closer to him than anyone else. Yet not so close to his problems as he is, okay? Because he's too close to his problems. His vision may be distorted. Your viewpoint is better. You are near the center of his life, yet you stand back a step or two. Your vision is broader. Your perspective is clearer. You care about him more than anyone else, and you're willing to sacrifice more. Even if you have less knowledge than others, your advice may be more reliable. So here are the requirements for being a good counselor. First, drop the habit of giving daily advice or suggestions. This can be a weary unto him, okay? He may turn his ears off and not listen. So save your advice for when he asks for it or when it's very important. If you give your advice rarely, he'll be more open to it. Next, eliminate negative thinking. Overcome your doubts, your fears, your anxieties, or your advice could do him more harm than help. Okay, good counselors are positive thinkers and they're cautious, but not negative. If you are inclined to be negative, there are some good books that you can read. There's a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Peel, or Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Moltz. A good counselor must have something worthy to give, so develop your character and gain wisdom. Deepen your philosophy about life, broaden your knowledge of the world and what's going on around you. Okay, and make sure that you become an unselfish, giving person who is interested in someone else besides yourself. If you become a wonderful person, your husband will put his trust in you and seek your advice. But if you're shallow and self-centered, you won't have anything to offer him. And this was Dora's problem, if you remember back in the first wife talk. Okay, she lacked too much in herself to be a good counselor, he said, okay, when giving advice. So if I recall, it said that David Copperfield relied on Agnes. Okay, and married to Dora, he had no one to turn to. I did feel sometimes, he said, that I could have wished my wife had been my counselor and had been endowed with the power to fill up the void which somewhere seemed to be about me. Okay, so a husband will cherish that in a wife. Now, how to give feminine advice. A subtle way to give advice is to ask a leading question, such as, have you thought about doing it this way? Or have you considered the possibility of, all right, the key word is you, all right? Because, he'll claim the idea as his own and he'll discuss it freely without feeling threatened. Even if his answer is, yes, I have thought about that idea, or no, but, I'll consider it. It's still, you using that keyword you, it's giving him, this claim that it's his own idea, okay? Number 2, listen. Okay, after you give leading questions, prod him from time to time and keep things going, but make sure that you learn to just listen. All throughout the conversation, you want to do more listening than talking. Okay, every good counselor knows the importance of listening carefully before giving advice, and it's better to reserve the advice for the end of the conversation. And sometimes a wise woman won't have to give advice at all, because once you ask those little questions here and there to get his gears turning and get him talking about things and discussing it, he could come to the answer himself. A lot of times the answer to our problems lies within ourselves. We just need that listening ear, So number 3, express insight. Okay, when expressing your viewpoint, say I feel, or I sense, or I perceive, okay, as it indicates insight. And he won't argue with a feeling or a perception, but avoid words like I think or I know, because he can put up a good argument to what you think or know. Okay, number 4, don't appear to know more than he does. You don't want to seem like a know-it-all. That's the whole thing. Don't appear to be overly wise or have all the answers, or surpass your husband's, intelligence, okay? Or appear as an authority in his field, or just, hope he notices how smart you are. If he's made mistakes in the past, also, sister, like just a little sidebar, if he's made mistakes in the past and you knew all along what he should have done, and maybe just wondering like, why didn't he know better? Don't bring that up, okay? Because he will resent you for a smug attitude, okay? Some things are better left unsaid. Number 5, don't regard him as a little boy that you must look out for or shield from the hard world, that you have to take responsibility for or worry about as you would a child. Try to refrain from having from being motherly, because we do have this motherly nature about us, and this motherly attitude. So try to make sure that you're not coming off in that way. All right. And number 6, we mentioned this before. Don't talk man to man. Don't hash things over as men do, putting yourself on an equal plane with him. Okay. Like, for example, you're saying something like, let's come to some conclusions, or why don't we go over it again? Or I think I've spotted the trouble areas. Keep him in the dominant position to help him feel needed and adequate as the leader. Okay, and number 7, don't act braver than he. Okay, if you're giving advice to a man on a matter in which he's filled with fear, don't make the mistake of acting braver than he is. Okay, suppose he wants to create a new business or change jobs. Maybe he wants to ask for a raise or try a new idea. And he's nervous about it. He's fearful about the outcome. Okay, there's a possibility that the whole thing could fall apart. If you courageously say, why are you hesitating? Or you don't have anything to be afraid of, you're showing more manly courage than he does. So instead say, it sounds like a good idea, but it seems so challenging. Okay, or are you sure you want to do it? Because such meekness tends to awaken manly courage and prompts him to say, it isn't so tough. I think I can handle it. Whenever a man detects fearfulness in a woman, it naturally awakens masculine courage. Okay? Number 8, do not have unyielding opinions. Okay? When giving advice, don't have unyielding opinions. Okay? Such opinions awaken opposition and lead to arguments, obligating him to take your advice, and it just makes you appear unfeminine. So steer clear from unyielding opinions. Or the last one, number 9, don't insist that he do things your way. Okay, let him drink from your fountain of advice as much or as little as he likes, with no pressure. Okay, it's like a use it or take it approach. Okay, it's better to let him make a mistake than pressure him into doing it your way and harm your relationship. All right, now let's turn our attention more fully to one of the most important requirements of a man's successful leadership, which is your obedience. We talked about this a little bit in the last one. I just want to touch a little more on it. Your obedience is the foundation of an orderly home, a successful family, and successful lives of the children. The wife is the key, okay? When she sets an example of obedience to her husband, the children follow suit, okay? It has not only immediate benefits, but far-fetching effects on their entire lives. Okay, on the other hand, when the wife refuses to obey her husband, she sets a pattern of rebellion for her children to follow. And they learn from her that they don't have to obey an instruction if they don't want to do it. And you know that there's some way to get around it, and that's not the type of example that we want to demonstrate for our children. Okay, when such children are turned out into the world, they have difficulty obeying the law or higher authority, okay, or leadership, like at work or something like that, being a part of a team, you know, and sports or whatever, you know, having coaches, life coaches, counselors, you know, the scriptures say is safety in the multitude of counselors. Everyone needs to have someone over them, some type of elder or counselor. Okay, so the problems of rebellious youth can often be traced to homes where the mother disobeyed the father or showed lack of respect for his authority. You know, the general movement with women demanding to vote and equality, and just ceasing to submit to the control of their husbands. In the process, that's when parents began to lose control of their children. And when we really started seeing that scripture come into full effect, where it says women are your oppressors and your children, or no, children are their oppressors and the women rule over them. I believe it's in Jeremiah, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, it's like Mr. Parkinson, you know, he said in his own Victorian childhood, Pomp's word was law, and mother's most deadly threat was, I shall have to inform your father. But nowadays, the mother can't appeal to the children in that way because they have denied paternal authority themselves. On the other hand, women who are strictly obedient to their husbands, showing honor and respect for their authority, set an example of obedience for their children to pattern from. All right. So now let's talk about problems in the patriarchy. When the wife fears failure, okay, I believe we talked about this a little bit too in the last talk. Women, you know, the world over, have hard time supporting their husband's plans or decisions because they're afraid of failure. And, you know, women need to take a look at success and failure. No man ever succeeded to any extent without running into risk of failure. Okay, he can't climb to the top of a mountain, so to speak, without taking risks. Okay, in fact, failure seems to be the history of success. Okay, and we can see that in different examples, but I don't want to make this too prolonged. All right, but the wife is an important key to a man's success. When she supports his decisions for better or for worse, he can survive his mistakes and keep going forward. All right, if not, she could be the means of keeping him in obscurity. Men who could have contributed great things to life have fallen into obscurity because they failed to have that support of their wife on a risky road to success. So when a wife rebels, let's discuss that. The fear of a mistake or failure may invoke the wife's rebellion. Okay, and a Christian writer, Orson Pratt, he writes on this subject, and he says, the wife should never follow her judgment in preference to that of her husband. For if the husband desires to do right, but errs in judgment, the Lord will bless her in endeavoring to carry out his counsels. For God has placed him at the head, And though he may err in judgment, yet God will not justify the wife in disregarding his instructions and counsels. For greater is the sin of rebellion than the errors which arise from want of judgment. Therefore, she would be condemned for suffering her will to arise against his. Okay, be obedient and God will cause all things to work for good. And he will correct the errors of the husband in due time. And basically what he's saying is, like, look, God set the man as head. So it's a sin if you be rebellious and you don't honor your husband, his counsels, and carry out his judgments, like, follow what his leadership is, right? But if you do, the blame is not on you, because you're doing what God told you to do by obeying your Lord. Okay? And, let the Most High work it all out. Next, I want to talk about, I'm just zooming through this. When he flounders, okay? If your husband is sometimes the type of person that's a little indecisive, because there are some men who can be very indecisive. I know my son, he's one of those people. He's like always, it's hard for him to decide on things. Like, I'm like, son, do you want the pistachios with the shells on them or the ones without the shells? And his answer is always, whatever you want me to have. Poor baby. But yeah, like, some men can be very, very indecisive. And if your husband is, overly cautious by nature, just accept this tendency and learn to live with it, okay? He may be moved by fear, a fear that you should understand. Okay, a common fear is that his decision will put his family to disadvantage. For example, the man may desire to return to school to further his education, but fears that it's going to threaten the security of his family. So in this case, you can encourage his decisions by assuring him that you're willing to make the necessary sacrifices. Okay, your husband might fear a decision that'll lead to the loss of money or prestige, and he might wish to proceed with plans but lacks courage to do it. So if you detect his fears, just build his confidence and help him to make decisions. Okay, because sometimes as wives we have to just be that support, for our husbands. The scriptures tell us to be a pillar of rest, and a pillar is that's a mighty thing. An entire building rests upon a pillar. Pillars hold up buildings, temples. Okay, so it's strengthened being that pillar of rest. And just being that woman who can show support, all right? Wherever he lacks, you just fill in the gaps. We're created to be that helpmate, that perfect helpmate. So when he won't lead, I've been hearing a lot of women, kind of complaining about that. And that's something I want to touch on a little bit during our next live meeting. When he won't lead, you may want very much for your husband to take the lead and you want a strong arm to lean on, but he backs away from that position as the leader, okay, as his masculine role, taking on that masculine role. And in this case, you may become frustrated and take over the leadership of the family out of necessity, okay? But how can you encourage him to lead? First, read him scriptures, that appoint him as the leader. Or, reciting scriptures that appoint him as the leader. Reason with him that someone has to take the lead, okay? And he's more qualified than you. And you don't want to lead. Express that and let him know that you need him to take over this responsibility. Okay? And then offer your loyal support. And after that, devote yourself to your domestic duties and just make success there. And by doing so, you clearly define the division of responsibility between you and your husband. All right? The more that you step into your role, he can, it'll give him a push to step into his. Lastly, the thing I want to touch on is when he leads his children astray. So if your husband is leading his family into corruption, if he encourages your children to cheat, lie, steal, be immoral, or follow other evil practices, you have a moral obligation to take them out of the household, away from evil influences. Okay, if you're without children, you have the same obligation to remove yourself. Just remember that separation is always for, the end goal is reconciliation. But if it's a situation where he's just had a weak moment, and it was just like a slip up, not something that he just maintains, or if he's negligent and keeping those commandments, that order our footsteps in the right direction. Maybe he's the weaker individual in the marriage, in the relationship. Just be very patient with him, be long suffering, and keep your marriage intact the best that you can. Okay, grace. Remember grace, long suffering, humbleness of mind, and just always doing your best to let your light shine by being humble and meek and patient and loving and setting that good example, all in it. So that's pretty much it. Just gonna leave off with saying that a home where the father presides is a house of order. Okay, there's less argument and contention and more harmony. Taking the lead helps him grow in masculinity, and out of necessity he acquires the traits of firmness, decisiveness, self-confidence, and a sense of responsibility. And when the wife is removed from leadership duties, she has less worry and concern, and she can devote herself to domestic duties and succeed in her career in the home. Okay, children who grow up in a home where father's word is law have a natural respect for authority, and they will thrive at school, in the body, in just all areas of society. In a world where men lead, we will have less crime, less violence, less divorce, less homosexuality, and there will be happier marriages, happier homes, and therefore happier people. If the patriarchy could be lived widely, it would be a world of law and order. Okay, and there's many rewards for, success in the patriarchy. You can definitely find warmth and security and comfort in being submissive. And I'm going to leave off right there. And I thank you so much for tuning in. Assignment. So, okay, let's just run through it really fast. How to let him lead and you follow. This is going back to part 1 as well. Honor his position is what we discussed. Let go. Have a girlish trust in him. Be adaptable. Don't have inflexible preconceived ideas. Make your dreams portable. Be obedient. Present a united front. Support his plans and decisions. We talked about asserting yourself when needed. And then how to give feminine advice. We discussed ask leading questions, listen, express insight, such as I feel, I sense, I perceive. Don't appear to know more than he does. Don't be motherly. Don't talk man to man. Don't act braver than he is. Don't have unyielding opinions, and don't insist he do things your way. Okay? Remember, it's better to let a man have his way and fail than to stand in his way and make him feel thwarted. Okay, so the assignment is going to be, if you have been in control, if you have been running things your way, let go. Tell your husband that he is the God-appointed leader of his family, that you're sorry you've not understood this in the past, and that from now on, you'll do everything to honor his position. Number 2, man, and it's going to feel like such a weight lifted off your shoulders, sisters. I pray good success for you in this area if that has been going on in your household. Number 2, if he doesn't lead, recite, quote scriptures at the beginning that we discussed. And if he agrees to you reading to him, read him the rights of, the guides that we discussed here. And then say something like, I want you to be the leader. If you take this responsibility, I will support your plans and decisions. Even though I might not always agree, I want you to do the masculine things so I can become more feminine. Okay, just communication is key, sisters. And lastly, for the assignment, if he has been domineering, read to him about Jacob in Genesis 31. The Lord instructed Jacob to return to the land of his fathers, but he first called Leah and Rachel into the field to discuss it with them and win their support. Okay, that I think is a good thing to talk and discuss with to your husband, just to get that righteous example, because the things that are written aforetime are for our learning. So thank you for tuning in. 50 Shades of Femininity. Until next time, we'll be picking up talking about the protector. Shalom.